In nomine Patris et Filii Spiritus Sancti, Amen. Veni Sancti Spiritus, Replectorum qualifiterium et tuae amoris in sine macende, et mit spiritum tuum creabuntur.
Et tu nobis facem ter.
Oremus, Deus qualifiterium Sancti Spiritus, illustratione docubisti. Da nobis in eodem spiritu recta sapere, et eos evagastas in gaudere, per Christum nominum nostrum,
Amen.
Quam Maria Immaculatum,
Ora pro nobis.
Santa Joseph,
Ora pro nobis.
Santa Caterina,
Ora pro
in
nobis.
nomine Patris et Filii Spiritus Sancti. Amen. So the Catholic Trumpet has just issued a very good video. They're all very good. And this one is Greg Taylor just reading out one of the requisites, but reading the doctrine of Bishop Williamson, which when you condense it, all his new teachings on no structure, no need for Council of Trent seminaries with structure and organization, no need, the religious liberty among traditionalists, ecumenism among traditionalists, like he said, he said you can just go to the least contaminated mass, and he went to the Feniites several times and gave confirmations. That was a scandal in Kentucky. And what else? The collegiality, no need for authority. You know, his vocation really was just continue the work of Archbishop Lefebvre, continue the work of Catholic tradition. But he said, put away your toys. I'm not going to be leading. Don't expect me to lead. I don't have that authority. Well, when the dam is breaking and the breach is about to collapse, someone has to step in. Right? He was the one to do it. But anyway, a very good point that the video brings out, which we'll see, is you have Vatican II in 1962 to 61.
65.
And then you have, which is it's the Protestant Revolution, French Revolution, Communist Revolution, all this erupting, all these rotten Masonic ideas erupting inside the church now. This is outside the church. Now these are entering into the church. And I think it's Cardinal Suenens who said Vatican II was the October Revolution in the church. What's the October Revolution? Anybody?
That's when Lenin started the socialist revolutions in Russia.
Yeah, in Russia, the Communist Revolution. So, he called it the Communist Revolution, basically, the Bolshevik Revolution inside the church. And another cardinal called it the French Revolution inside the church. And Cardinal Ratzinger said that much. Vatican II assimilated the ideas of the liberal culture. Those are exactly his words. And the liberal culture is the Masonic ideas. Freedom of conscience, separation of church and state, freedom of the press, freedom to teach what you want in public, and all the errors attached to it, which we're studying with the encyclicals. And then Vatican II exploded in the new SSPX, the conciliar SSPX, in what year?
2012.
With the doctrinal declaration was the real statement. But there's many other documents that show this direction, such as the letter of the July statement of the General Chapter Statement in 2012 of July, which attached to it was the 6 conditions for the agreement with Rome. So we're happy to make an agreement with Rome, but here's our 6 conditions, which are so flimsy. They were so horrible, the conditions. Nothing about faith, defending the faith in Christ the King. It's all about, well, if the bishops are nice and let us have our Latin Mass and let us preach against modernism, just totally wimpish, total surrender. And the bishop fillet revolution in the church, in the SSPX. And he was responsible for this. So he still has time to turn around. He still has time to come back to the position of our founder before he dies. And then the very good point he makes is in the resistance, which was the continuation really of the work of Archbishop Lefebvre, but Vatican II in the resistance was the fake resistance, the teachings of Bishop Williamson, and that's brought out very well in this most recent Catholic trumpet, which you will hear. So you see how the enemies of Christ said, we will drown out those last remaining integrists, they call them. The last Catholic resistance, we will drown them out, they said, with liberalism, ecumenism, religious liberty. So the only ones standing left right now who have not compromised are those with the Catholic resistance. And even then, will we be able to stand without God's grace? No. Without Our Lady, well, there's no chance. But if we humbly fight and trust in Our Lady and put ourselves on her Immaculate Heart, we will have the grace to persevere. But, so the Catholic resistance today are those Catholics throughout the whole world just resisting all the Vatican II and modernist and liberal errors. But you'll hear in that talk, Bishop Williamson, we've been fighting this for years, since 2014. What are we now? 2025. So 9 years. Has it been 9 years? No, more than that.
11 years.
11 years. And, and I always say that in the sermons. I have a great respect for Bishop Williamson. I'm always quoting him in his great days. But with his errors, we can't accept them. And he was promoting heavily the new Mass. You'll hear all the quotes. It's quite surprising, though, when you hear them all condensed. What it really was Vatican II in the resistance. And he didn't even believe in the resistance. He called it the fake, he called it the what, anybody?
Resistance.
Yeah, resistance. He didn't believe in the resistance. What's the difference? Anybody?
That he thought that it was good to have all these pockets of priests separated throughout the world. That way, because he believed that structure would contaminate again any good work that would begin. So he lost all hope in the way that the church always did things. And he said, well, because the situation and because Bishop Light did what he did, it's better that the priests are just all separated, all scattered, and they don't have a centrifugal figure structure to rely upon.
Yes, that's exactly what he promotes, which is anarchy.
Yeah.
It's just anarchy. It's not. I mean, you put a bunch of boys in a basketball court in the middle of the city, and they're going to play basketball. There's going to be instantly what? Organization and structure. You be a captain, I'll be a captain. Pick the teams. And here's the rules. You can't go past the boundaries. You can't take a three-pointer from just below the net or whatever. You're going to have you have to have structure and organization. And I don't know where he got this, but it's quoted in this video. He writes to Father Jacquemin, who unfortunately went sedevacantis because he's a very good Belgian priest, Flemish, a good fighter. But Bishop Williamson told him, I'm a liberal. I'm a liberal. And he told me that too on the phone. I never say this much, but he said, at heart, I am a liberal. And Well, all this kind of proves it, doesn't it? So he wasn't a liberal under Archbishop Lefebvre. When Archbishop Lefebvre was alive, he kept all his bishops in line, all his priests, and some rebelled against him, some went sedevacantes, some went novus ordo, but under Archbishop Lefebvre, the 4 bishops behaved, and they behaved well. And Bishop Williamson it's like 2 different persons almost. The pre-2014 Bishop Williamson and the post-2014 Bishop Williamson. Anyway, pray for his soul. He certainly faced his judgment and faced the consequences of his words and works. So, but he did promote Our Lady's Rosary, so I think Our Lady would have intervened for him. And he was a good fighter in the trenches. He really was, and a good leader for the United States. He was a big blessing for the U.S. in the 80s and 90s, in the 2000s. And he reminded the women. This is not doctrinal. Now this is a moral question, but it touches on faith. He got really a lot of heat for his letters on slacks. He put out, his letters, monthly letters. He called it Slacks 1, Slacks 2, Slacks 3. All about women wearing pants. And he's right. And he took a lot of heat for it. Oh, he got tomatoes, eggs, liberals swinging their arms up. This has nothing to do with Catholicism. Why are you talking about pants? Well, in one of his letters, he puts out in 1964, Cardinal Siri in Italy. There's a wonderful letter he puts out telling the Italian women, don't wear these modern masculine fashions. Stay in your dresses. It's part of the feminine attire. Do not dress like men. And he quotes Deuteronomy, I think it's Deuteronomy, when God says, this is an abomination before me for men to wear women's clothes and women to wear men's clothes. It's an abomination before me, says Almighty God. So he put out some good letters, and he fought hard against religious liberty, ecumenism, collegiality. You can read all his past letters. They're now in books. And they're all just dynamite until 2014. And it's around that time that he was offered a deal. And that's when Father Pfeiffer at the time said, don't take any deals. We're tired of these deals. But after that deal, that's when he changed. And was it Rome, maybe, offering him, we'll give you several million, just shut your mouth and, don't be overdoing it, but, try to make the people in your resistance realize that Vatican II is not so bad. We're friends. The new Mass is digestible. Maybe, I don't know. Whatever happened, he changed. So, anyway, it's very good. So we're here. We're on the ongoing battle, and if Father Hewko ever comes out saying the new Mass nourishes your faith, you can go to it. You can the new Mass miracles, Vatican II is not so bad. You can interpret into the lighter tradition. Well then, Father Hewko, chuck him. He's become salt that lost its flavor. Same with Father Ruiz. He's a solid one. And Father, Father Fuchs is in Austria. And he's pretty much with the resistance, but I hear he's been working with Bishop Williamson's bishops a little more and just being quiet about Bishop Williamson's errors. And then Father Stratanovich out in California, he's pretty much a friend of us. And so is Father Sam Waters in Pennsylvania. He'll be helpful. Like if I can't make a sick call in Philadelphia or somewhere else down there, he'll voluntarily go. He'll go. With just a generous priest. So that's a wonderful thing. I hope he's not Feeneyite. I don't know. I hope he's not Feeneyite, because Feeneyism is it's so stupid. It's so dumb. It's so dumb. But I won't get into that here. And then Father Raphael, he's all about the Benedictines. I don't agree with him going ahead giving confirmations. He's doing that publicly. He's already given many people confirmations. I don't agree with that. Without delegation. I just don't agree with it. But his argument is Pius XII allowed it in the cases of emergency, danger of death, as we saw. Right? But even when Archbishop Lefebvre was alive and couldn't come to the United States, the society priests didn't ask him, please give us a delegation so we can go ahead and confirm. No, they just waited years until Bishop Lefebvre could come. And when he couldn't come, they waited until he consecrated bishops. So, I don't agree with that, but anyway, he has his arguments. And but on doctrine, Father Raphael is still level-headed. So that's a good thing. At least on doctrine, he's still sound. And then, let's see, Father Chazal. Father Chazal. He's a great warrior. But I told him, Father Chazal, you should be, Father Pfeiffer and I went to meet him in Ireland, you should be preaching against the errors of Bishop Williamson. You shouldn't be silent about this. And he just kind of hemmed and hawed and said, well, at least I have a bishop. You two don't have a bishop. So, all right, so you're going to compromise the faith to get a bishop? That's basically what he did, right? And I've written him, I've told him, Father Chazal, you should be speaking against these errors. You shouldn't be silent. Yeah, but I have a seminary at least, and I have the bishops coming to do my ordinations and minor orders and confirmations. At least I have a bishop. So what's better, to have a bishop compromising on the faith, or to have no bishop, but not compromising on the faith, and just totally relying on divine providence that God will provide whenever he wants? Right? Which is more offensive to God? Compromising to get some sacraments, or holding strong on the faith and suffering until God has an answer? Well, we choose to stay with the faith, stay faithful to our Lord and his Catholic doctrine until God has some solution. And that's the great mockery against the resistance now, is you have no bishop. But in the world, how many bishops are there? There's over probably 3,000 bishops. And 6, 7, 8 so-called traditional bishops. I guess you could include 9 with Archbishop Vigano. The only one speaking out is Archbishop Vigano. The rest have become silent bunny rabbits. And they're doing more harm. And they're really endangering their salvation. If they don't preach publicly, I mean with letters reaching souls and more than just their parish, I think their eternal salvation is gravely at stake. Right? An example would be if you're in a huge theater and there's a fire that just broke out in the back. But everybody no one smells it. No, there's no reaction. There's no alarms. But the fire is threatening the whole theater. And this guy who knows just says nothing. And then within a few minutes, the whole place catches fire. Nobody can exit in time. And everybody burns up. Who's responsible before God?
The guy who knew.
The guy who knew. So these bishops who know, they've been trained in the SSPX, they've been trained in the battle, they've been trained to fight modernism, and they're silent, their eternal salvation is gravely at stake. That's why I don't pull any punches with them. Bishop Zendejas, Bishop Morgan, Bishop Four, Bishop Thomas Aquinas, who else? Bishop, there's 6 of them. The one in Poland, and Bishop Bellini. You don't hear them. Just don't hear them. And I've appealed to 3 of them personally. And they justify their position in weasel ways, in stupid ways, you know. So we're at a paralysis. And those are the words Our Lady of Quito used. There will be a paralysis, paralyzed. Catholics will be paralyzed. And they will feel paralyzed. But right when the enemies, the Freemasonic lodges, think they have won and conquered and destroyed the Catholic Church, I will step in, she says, and overthrow them. So the wonderful thing about our position now is we have to just trust Our Lady. That's all. Yeah, but that's extreme. You have to be reasonable. You have to negotiate. Just be quiet so you can get confirmations. And, well, no, you can't. Bishop Williamson told me, I won't send you oils, holy oils, unless you start promoting publicly. So he demands a public preaching, but promoting the new Mass miracles. I told him, no way. No way, I can't. I have the letters of correspondence between us. And then he said, if you don't, then don't even bother me with your emails because I won't even respond. So I made one last letter to him, respectfully, always respectful to him. But anyway, that's where we are. And so, as one of you said the other day, well said, the first line of the hockey players they've all abandoned the team. The second line of hockey players on the rink, they're out there, but they've all, compromised also. That's the new SSPX. So the first line were the great bishops of Vatican II who compromised. Second string is the second line of hockey players who go out. If you play hockey, there's 2 or 3 or 4 lines that go out at a time. There's 5 players on the ice plus the goalie. The goalie usually stays in the whole game, unless he gets injured. And the second string, the SSPX, they've all compromised. So the third string, Bishop Williamson and all the good priests who rallied around him, hoping he would do what Archbishop Lefebvre did, but flopped. That's the third string. So who's left? The bench warmers and the backup goalie, which is funny because they're the nobodies, They're the guys that sweat with everybody and work hard on practice, but at every game they're on the bench, getting cold, but having a good spirit. Good job, nice goal, way to go, teammates, nice assist, great check, you slaughtered him against the wall. But the bench warmers, they're just there. But that's who God has called up now. It's true. We're just the nobody bench warmers. Nobodies. No, and if we compromise, if we cave into this revolution, then God will raise someone else to continue the battle. I will. If the children don't cry out, the very stones in the street will cry out, Christ said. And Bishop Williamson used to say this. What I'm telling you now, he used to say this. That the society was the pilot light on the stove, just to maintain the faith until Rome comes back to tradition. The old-fashioned stoves that always had a pilot light going. And you just flick on the gas and it sparks up immediately, right? So his job was to continue the work of Archbishop Lefebvre, but he flopped. And Bishop Tissier, he went right along with everything. So he's answering for his non-action as well. So God has to use the bottom of the barrel, the peripsema, says St. Paul, the scrapings on the bottom of the pan. That's us. So we can laugh because it is funny. It is funny. But God doesn't need anybody. But he wants to use even poor instruments. As long as we love his mother, keep fighting for the faith. Don't compromise with liberalism, modernism, Freemasonry, and all these revolutions. And stay consecrated to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. You're gonna fight fine. You're gonna go well. But that's a special grace we have to pray for. And we should fear and tremble. When these giants fell, the great bishops of Vatican II, some of them were geniuses, great theologians. Some of them were just holy men, like Dom Gabriel Sorte. He was the Carthusian abbot in France. Sorte. I think it's with an E, or Dom Gabriel Sorte. He was the one that, with Archbishop Lefebvre, they were watching Bonini demonstrate the new Mass. And Sorte was the one who raised his hand and said, excuse me, Father Bonini, you're writing this new Mass, and you're saying all these people have to participate, and you can't have a Mass unless people are there to participate. Well, what happens in our monasteries when we have one main Mass, but then we have 15, 20 side altar Masses going on? How's that going to work with participation? And you know what Father Bonini said? The Archbishop writes about this. He says, I never thought about that. That was his answer. We never thought about that. And who's we?
Concilium.
The Concilium, the rotten rat bag. Yes. So Dom Gabriel Sorte was a chaplain in World War I. I think it was him that got shot. He had a bullet hit him while he was anointing one of the dying soldiers. And he was wearing his Benedictine medal. And the bullet penetrated the medal and bounced off. Knocked him over. And knocked him out. But when he came to consciousness, he had a huge bullet dent in his Benedictine medal. So when these giants fell, that's what shocked Archbishop Lefebvre. He said, where's all my comrades? And someone asked Archbishop Lefebvre, don't you feel alone? You're abandoned and you're the only one fighting with another nobody bishop down in Brazil. Don't you feel like, this is going extreme here? And he said, look, I have all the popes with me. I have all the saints and councils of the church and all the saints in heaven. If I stand alone, blessed be God. And when he consecrated bishops, he really didn't expect the crowds that came. He thought maybe a few faithful priests, that's it. Turned out 10,000 people showed up. I had the privilege to be there myself and see the Archbishop consecrate the 4 bishops. And the bishops were good. They were dynamite. The first words of Bishop Williamson when he was consecrated, after the meal, each bishop spoke, and he got up and said in French, "C'est la guerre." It's war. And he was right. And he went on with a good speech. But so when the conciliar SSPX, the 4 bishops of the society, caved in, Bishop Williamson was the one that was kicked out. Maybe this was pre-organized. I suspect it might have been pre-arranged. That Bishop Williamson, it was agreed that he would be kicked out over the whole Holocaust question, and around him would rally the resistance, the Catholics really who understand the war, hoping he would lead. And then he would eventually lead them to the new Mass, accepting Vatican II in so many words and in so many ways. Right? So, when these towers fall, I guess, there's no more towers that can fall. We just have to rely on Our Lady. But that's where we are. And so it's an exciting time. It's the best time to be alive, and it's the best time to be engaged in battle. As one American general said, I think which name it was. Might have been MacArthur. General MacArthur. He said, we got the enemy in front of us, we got the enemy behind us, we have the enemy to our right and to our left. We can't have a better situation. And that's our situation. We're so surrounded, we're humanly hopeless. So we have to just put all our trust in the Blessed Mother. And pray for, the bishops to turn around. I pray for Bishop Fillet. Imagine if he did a U-turn and snapped out of his liberal trance. What good he could do before he dies. What good he could do. But if he went traditional, if he went the position of Archbishop Lefebvre, they'd probably expel him. Because now the liberals are deeply entrenched in the SSPX. They run the thing. All the liberals are in charge. To Bishop Fillet's credit, to Father Piglariani's credit, they did do a little milquetoast reaction against the insults against Our Lady, with the Our Lady Mediatrix of all graces and co-redemptrix. They did a little bit of reaction, so I'm sure God will bless that, defending his mother. But as one priest put it, it was a very milquetoast defense of Our Lady. Milquetoast. When you put a piece of toast in milk for a long time, what happens to it?
Starts to get really soggy and starts it'll melt like butter in your mouth.
Yeah, it falls apart. Yes. So anyway, gentlemen, you have the grace to see. You have the grace to test your vocation. You have the grace to realize the real situation of the battle and how the primacy is given to doctrine. And as we're reading the popes, you realize the doctrine is always first, always the most important. Doctrine is like the steering wheel. It pertains to the knowledge, intellect, which wants to know truth. So the steering wheel directs where the car goes. And the engine is the will, the good will. But you can have all the good will in the world, but if the mind is off track, you go off a cliff, you go into a ditch. So you need both the good doctrine and the good will and the virtuous life that goes with it. So we have to be striving to be saints, always. And I love what Cardinal P says, basically, in so many words, forget about being a saint if you're not fighting for the real doctrine against liberalism. But that's the new SSPX. They're all about virtues, saints, holy lives, holy living, practical devotions, but they've abandoned the fight of doctrine. They've abandoned the fight of the principles and the public defense. And that means attacking those who promote the false doctrine. That is, the conciliar church, these modernist popes, and the modernist bishops. But imagine the situation where if I was an SSPX priest, a new one, I am an SSPX priest, but it's a traditional one. But if I was a new SSPX priest and I was meeting with the local bishop down in Manchester, New Hampshire, and on friendly terms, and asking him if once in a while he can let us use one of his churches, please, with the Divine Mercy picture on the side, like they had in Florida when Bishop Tissier was there. Do you think and he has, these pervert masses, he has rock and roll masses, he has Latin masses, he says nothing against abortion, he's all pro Pope Leo now. Do you think an SSPX priest is going to attack his scandals when he's on friendly terms? Do you think when he's using his church to say the Latin Mass, so kindly letting him use it, he's going to preach against the scandals of that bishop and modernism and modernist Rome? No, they put themselves in a situation of silence, which is criminal. Silence is golden, they say, but sometimes it's a crime. Silence can be a crime. Like I told you about the guy in the theater. His silence is absolutely criminal, and he is responsible for all the deaths. So are all these bishops by their silence. And the popes too. They talk about environment, they talk about all this nonsense, but nothing to save souls. So our era may have the most popes in hell than any time in history. So anyway, we'll listen to this talk. It's very good. It's very good. Very well done. Okay, that's the Catechism for today. Adjutorium nostrum in nomine Domini.